standpoints of the university. NIUCO is the Collaborative Innovation Center, is the space that I work. It's part of the University of Sagrado Corazon. We are located in Santurce, which is the highest density neighborhood in Puerto Rico, with a population around 115,000 inhabitants, and with a lot of assets, particularly cultural assets, over 250 cultural assets in the area. We're a collaborative innovation center that promotes strategic innovation and design within the urban, community, and institutional context in the area. This is kind of our constant clients, students, faculty, entrepreneurs from our neighborhoods, from different segments of the economy, but in particular we serve the creative industry, which we have over, as I mentioned before, 250 cultural assets. We offer them creation, validation, research, prototyping, and product development services. We have a Fab Lab, we also have an Idea Lab, and that's pretty much our infrastructure, around 2,000 square feet, originally planned to serve 5,000 students through courses, workshops, hackathons, and different kind of services that we offer from there. But it happens in September, a couple of hurricanes hits Puerto Rico, and the university kind of discovered a new, complete different reality, and a complete different, and confirmed that the mission of the university, in a sense, is not necessarily towards the current affairs of a university in terms of running a semester, administrating programs, offering and conferring degrees, or administrating grants. It's actually serving the community, and that work and that commitment in the mission, it was kind of I would say, transformed in a day. After Maria, the university became a solidarity hub, serving our immediate community. We have 40 different communities that surround the university within Santurce, 40 different communities with different cultural aspects that nourish our general culture of the barrio, but with variety of needs. So from the university was able to serve not just our immediate communities, but also we were able to reach the 78 municipalities with different kind of services. In particular, our space, our center, the Collaborative Innovation Center, we were in charge of two main aspects. We were in charge of organizing and offering cultural activities to the communities that surround the university. And the second one was to help and to assist the small and medium businesses that actually are located in the area. This is a map of Santurce. That's pretty much the geography, and those are the main communities, the ones that are mentioned on that map, that we served during the first 3 weeks after the hurricane. And after, in October and November, we started realizing cultural activities in order to impact and to diversify the different offers that those communities were able to access during after that period. But it was interesting that during that process, it was not just about the specific activities that we planned. It was also about the process of establishing a communication with sectors, with our leaders, with communities, that we assumed are there, that we as universities, we saw them in maps, we sometimes passed by them in order to get into our campuses, and sometimes we also share activities like this, but not necessarily we have the right communication, we don't have the appropriate communication, we don't have the necessary relationship, and we don't have trust between each other. So that was confirmed during those weeks after, in which we were in the necessity of establishing that communication and establishing that kind of relationship. That also happens with the business sector. I mean, people that we buy food, we buy materials, businesses in which we enter, I mean, in our daily activities during the week, There was a sector that was highly impacted. People were not even able, two months after, to actually open their businesses. And what we did was actually establishing that system of communication, opening our space, not necessarily for the ideation process yet, but also establishing the communication and establishing and managing and administering a communication system without this. Without access to internet, it was actually the old-fashioned way of speaking to people and sitting down with people and listening to problems and trying to arrange some sort of solution that will keep particularly their enthusiasm in the possibilities of retaining them in Santurce. I mean, retention was everything during those days for us. During that previous year to Maria, as part of a grant from the National Endowment for the Arts, we went through a process of planning a cultural district. It was a planning process, partially made or co-create with certain sectors that surround the university, specific, the cultural and the creative assets. And I mentioned partially because we were not, as part of the grant, we were not necessarily thinking in including all the different sectors that surround the university, but the framework of that plan actually established those 5 different sectors of the plan, which is there's a plan for the cultural production, for expanding the collaborative bridges, for actually bridging relationship between different other assets, visibilization and marketing of the cultural offer, public space and urban revitalization, and sustainability and economic development. This is the moment, the meeting in July 2017, a month and a half before that, the events of Maria. These were activities that we were performing after the plan was adopted. So we were kind of ready, developing, reusing buildings, occupying the public space, thinking ahead of how to implement a cultural district. This is 2 important diagrams in which one is kind of how we see the model that we were developing, and the other one is the co-creative and collaborative methodology of the plan itself. So it kind of shows the different cycles of ideating, validating, product development, and then implementing the different processes. We were able to pull resources out of grants, competitive grants that we submit from different sectors. And we're still working on that development of a cultural district, so we were able to be resilient after the path of Maria. So we work on the retention of those assets. We were able to keep some of them working within the university thanks to the help of Fundación Banco Popular, that was the first one that support us to create a co-working space within the university. We construct the furniture, we habilitate the space, and we open the university for those business that were not that didn't have electricity, no access to internet. They were looking for support and coaching. There were so many needs those days. But still, we're still working on that plan, serving the 250. Now we receive a new grant from the EDA to support that program that we created as a pilot program right after Maria to support the small businesses. We then polish it. After the pilot, we presented to the EDA. We were able to receive some funds to develop the CEPA, which is a program that works with 3 different components. First, it's focused on sustainable entrepreneurship. It develops innovation, validation, and research for those small businesses in the creative and cultural sectors, and it assists them in the product development and commercialization of the product along those different, of these 12 different activities. We're working with this from 2019 to 2021, covering all these assets. We've already been able to impact, since last year, 23 different industry. This is how our community looks like. I mean, this is some of the activities that we perform. Our center transform. It actually didn't transform in mission. We understood our mission through the successes, the events of Maria. These are the enterprises that we serve. These are actually, this is the case of an alumna from Sagrado Corazon. She was recently graduating after Maria. She's a fashion designer, she's a dancer, and she's now developing her own business, helping people who work within the neighborhood, publishing books. This is actually an ice cream parlor from the historic zone of Sagrado Corazon. They already launched their place. This is a ceramist, this is an artist that is right now negotiating her product with an international, and this is a theater company. Those are our kind of the enterprise that we serve. But something very recently that is actually very interesting is that we just a month, 2 months ago, we start organizing the commerce and the residents association. Now, it didn't exist in our neighborhood. It was not on place, so now we're organizing them. We launched recently a new website, a platform. It's not a website, it's more a marketing tool just to promote the different cultural assets and cultural offerings and tools, so to help them visualize as part of our strategic plan. And recently we present a new, we also present a grant. We were granted by the EDA to have a new facility, so it's going to be our hub for these 2 buildings that were dilapidated in Santurce, right in front of the university. We present a grant, EDA fund us to be able to rehabilitate, and this is going to be the hub of the Nuestro Barrio project, in which we're going to be not just being able to help those that are in initial stages of their development, but also to rent spaces, retail spaces or office spaces for them. This is a place that is going to have all the infrastructure to support, not just resist an hurricane, but be able to receive and serve the different sectors after a hurricane. And that's pretty much what we do at the university with this project, and we do this collaborating with the community. I mean, this is a project that it's about us. It's not about the institution. It's about the community. And thank you.
First of all, we're going to finish with all the panelists and we're going to go on and ask some questions. Just wanted to mention that you mentioned the word hub, and I'd rather you not use that word when we have people from the University of Puerto Rico present, because it's a very touchy word when we talk about hubs.
So yes, gracias Javier, thank you. That was great. That's great talk. Thank you. So good afternoon, everyone. Buenas tardes a todas y a todos. I am Alfonso Latoni. I work at the National Institute of Environmental Health Sciences in the Research Triangle part of North Carolina. It happens to be the one and only institute of the NIH, of the National Institute of Health, that's not in Bethesda, Maryland, where all the other 26 of the 27 institutes are. The NIDHS, Environmental Health Sciences, is located in Research Triangle Park, and there's a very interesting political history about that I'm happy to share with you afterwards, backstage, 50 years ago. So we are now in our year 51. And what I'd like to do this afternoon is try to combine and mix 3 things. I want to talk about community-based participation. CDPR, but through the lens of environmental health sciences. And then, of course, in the context of this conference, health disaster research. So, three things, and the reason why I was interested is because usually when people think about the National Institute of Environmental Health Sciences, they think that what we do is toxicology, heavy metals, lead, exposures, you know, all those biochemicals, lead, Flint, Michigan, mercury, PCBs, PFAS, right? So when they think of our institute, they're thinking that we are a bunch of, you know, biochemists, chemists, biologists, toxicologists, and that's true, yes. There's a lot of those, but there's also a commitment. There's also a heavy component, thanks to our leadership of social sciences, of CDPR, of community commitment to the community, that is also very present. Our mission is to discover how the environment affects people in order to promote healthier lives. We, as opposed to many of the NIH institutes, our focus is on environmental factors rather than a particular disease, like the National Cancer Institute, right, or the heart, lung, and blood, which is organal, you know, focus. Ours is more of environment and not the organs of the human body or diseases, right, like deafness, other communication disorders, the Institute on Dental and Craniofacial Health. So we are more towards prevention, right? We are more towards healthier lives and how the environment affects that. And we do this through active engagement with communities, affected communities, that span from Superfund sites, brownfields, to sites where there have been extreme weather events like wildfires, hurricanes, and the sort. We do also have a high visibility in community-based participation in the health sciences because we promote research that relies on community input, that highlights disease prevention, that includes many components for the affected communities. However, we don't stop there, right? This is research that, involving the community, will also lead to social action, political change, and public health initiatives. So, to this day, CDPR has been regarded as an effective method for transferring evidence-based research from the lab, from the setting of the lab, to the communities that could benefit and improve their health. So when we look at the history of CDPR, and I see colleagues in the audience, you know, who I've known for 3 decades working with CDPR, and you can all maybe remember, right, when CDPR used to be, you know, that idea where the community, it would be used to manipulate communities. It might be used for therapy, it might be used for informing. That was it, right? It was at that level, minimum involvement. Then, as CDPR began to develop, as we, the researchers, were more committed, more involved, we went to a next level, which perhaps may not have been the same, right? We consulted, sometimes having the community would be, involved to placate the community. I remember a study in Lajas in the 80s, in El Barrio, in Maguayo, and in Combate, where the Voice of America was planning on putting these medium wave antennas, and the community, was pretty much in arms. But CBPR and those who were there, and those of us who were there, it sort of like placated the community, right? We were still not and we were working towards partnership, right? And then we continued to develop to a point where today we talk about citizen science, right? We talk about empowering, those with whom we partner, right, in research. And I recall this morning when President Vince from CUNY, the University of New York, where he was sharing with us that study where someone went into Harlem, right? An engineer went into Harlem, just putting these measuring devices, and then some youngsters came about, and they were interested, and he taught them about that. He talked to them, and then that became a colloquium of more youngsters and more people, right? But what's the next step, right? In my institute, the next step is to also engage them as partners in collecting the data and making them part, right, of the research. If we publish, their names go in those publications. If they collect the data, they are citizen scientists. So that's when I was listening to the president say, gee, we could fund my institute to put out an RFA. Say, okay, the next step is, to engage them in real CBPR. And pretty much in the evolution, that's where we have been, that's where we are, all the way to the shared decision making. Now, we don't have to look at each one of these, but I just wanted to share this with you, just to put ourselves in a context where, in the past 16, 17 years, we look at these major public health emergencies, that span many different types of events, right? Some, yes, are nature, humans, but look at the span, earthquakes, wildfires, hurricanes, water, terrorism attacks, so forth. So when you look at this, you may remember when Katrina, Rita, Dennis, Wilma were happening in 2005, we thought that would be like lo peor, no? And we never thought that there could be something that was so expensive that could cost so much. And then, 12 years later, we have a span of cost and harm to humans that has went all the way up to the 3.6 billion, I'm sorry. So sometimes I like this slide, which I took from Prestado, from a colleague of mine at the Institute, because it really puts in perspective, like, wow, we thought that the worst had happened. Maybe the worst has not happened yet. And that's why I like to include this slide. So we at the MIEHS, we have a number of programs. I'm not going to go into all of them, but I just wanted for you to have like a view of. They go from, these are programs that are funded, supported at universities in partnership with NGOs, communities, CBPRs, and they span from environmental justice, core centers. The EHS core centers are the environmental health sciences core centers, are centers that are funded by the Institute where faculty can come to these centers and propose small grants, medium grants, to develop research on many health sciences areas. We have, and this is the one, the case that I'm going to talk about is the one about the Deepwater Horizon Research Consortium, because is our experience that brought together, among others, but sort of like a showcase that brings together academics, communities, our institute, scientists. We also have the worker training program, which pretty much focuses on first responders and how to train first responders and educate them and also fund them through the unions, the associations. We have, of course, the Superfund Research Program, Children's Environmental Health, Breast Cancer Centers, and, of course, fellowships for those undergraduate students that are up and coming through the pipeline and wanting to become an environmental scientist. So that's pretty much like the landscape of what we're doing. This is another slide that some of you may have seen this morning in one of the talks where, disasters demand a quick, a prompt, a fast response. So there's time-critical data, there's science, there's research, but we ask ourselves, when we say, is it safe? For whom? For whom is it safe? For what? For when? For where? Long-term physical, mental health impacts, we need to bring that into the research. Safety homes, residencies, workplaces. So again, it's a wide, so in some of the areas that we focus, of course, as I had mentioned, exposures to hazardous, physical, psychosocial, that hit those, that affect those. Mental health effects, vulnerabilities, resilience, that will be talked a lot at this conference. But we also fund research on the value of interventions and mitigation strategies. We do ecosystem studies, and we have an approach that we call the One Health Effects that I can go in. So then, 2010, the spill, the Gulf, workers killed, injured, 130,000 were involved in the cleanup. There had to be guidance for worker training, there had to be training. So there was a range of community concerns that this brought. So at the NIEHS, we began, we established, we funded our Gulf oil, the Gulf oil spill research study, the Gulf study. It's the largest study on the health effects of oil spills. It involved around 32,000 workers in the cleanup, 1,100 in-home medical assessments, 3,000 follow-up clinical exams. And the thing again is that this was done in concert, in tandem with academic and community engaged research. We call it the Deepwater Horizon, DWH Research Consortia. One example of the many is the one at the University of Florida, where academic and the community were doing research with local fishermen, collecting, processing seafood samples. Community members were helping with the survey, the eating habits, working together to collect, analyze, evaluate results, report the findings. And this was just one example with one university and the community. This is pretty much the chart that shows, all the parts of the Deepwater Horizon Consortia, the academic community partnership, the faculty cores, the projects, the administrative core, and what each of them does. Where is it that scientific evidence is developed? And it's not only in the lab, right? It's also in the street. It's also with that community partner collecting data. It's also with the academic providing resources. All of this in collaboration. Right now, it is 4 academic centers and 45 community organizations that would identify areas of concern, share approaches on how the research was to be conducted or should be. In the design, implementation, interpretation, and communication, our community partners had the leading role. They were teaching us, how to, and then of course, safety, food, children, maternal health. And that's pretty much the area, as you can see, Galveston, LSU, Tulane, University of Florida, the 4 universities that were supported by the Institute in this project. The research integration, pretty quickly, and those are the universities, the steering committee, the community-based participatory model. That was the model that was used, that continues to be used in the research design. The focus is on the general population, not just on everyone or only those affected, and the participation by the community members was in everything: governance, steering committee, research projects, working group members, community outreach and dissemination. I'm not going to read all of this, but these are the 4 states. These are the 4 states in which we had and still have community organizations. So the value, we continue to believe in the value of CBPR. It provides a context that enables the identification of relevant factors, exposures, mitigation, recovery. It will address and it continues to address issues of concern that are relevant to local communities and make discoveries more meaningful. The research will involve communities. I'll try to go faster. Okay. All right, so CBPR empowers communities. Our ongoing effort, we do it through the PEPH, our Partnerships for Environmental Public Health. If you Google that, it's rich of things, of information, of tools, research to action. That's a program that we already launched and we will be reissued this year, or has been reissued, again, Superfund, breast cancer centers. So, challenges of disaster research, like this morning we were saying, it's important, but despite its importance, it's typically delayed or missed. And that's where we become critical of ourselves, right? It has been usually, look at the chart, right? Look from the disaster to the time to start. Look at Sandy, 11 months to fund. I mean, 11 months after Sandy, my goodness, right? Why did it take so long? You know, so sometimes it's delayed, it's missed. How much did we miss in those 11 months from biosamples to you name it? This is the program, the Disaster Research Response Program. We talked about that this morning. It's not only part of the NIDHS, it's something that is part of the whole NIH. And these are the 6 major goals of the program. The idea is to address barriers to support data collection, fast to engage with agencies, academia, workers, communities, and there's a lot of colleagues of mine at the conference that are part of the disaster research response, and I can talk more about that after my talk. So I think that should be, this is part of the Institute, all of the components of the Institute. We talked about that this morning. How do you bring together the view that disaster is often defined by chaos, disruption, local social systems, but then, on the other hand, the need for higher peace, order, social observation, interaction, respect for the community. And this is